In recent days, the world has been watching with apprehension the health of Pope Francis. Today, a revelation from the Vatican changes everything, casting doubts on the future of the Church. Could this be the most delicate moment of his pontificate? Behind the doors of the Gemelli Hospital in Rome, specialized doctors are fighting to stabilize the Supreme Pontiff, while millions of faithful raise their prayers. What began as a preventive hospitalization has turned into a race against time. Before we begin, stop and think. How many truths have already been hidden? How many events shape the future without the majority noticing? Here, every fact is analyzed, every detail can change everything. If you seek to understand what is really happening, if you want to follow revelations that few have access to, then subscribe now and turn on notifications. Don't get left behind, because some truths wait for no one. Since February 14th, Jorge Mario Bergoglio has been facing a severe respiratory infection. Initially diagnosed with bilateral pneumonia, his condition has evolved, bringing risks that threaten his position at the helm of the Vatican. His advanced age makes this crisis even more delicate. Bilateral pneumonia compromises the lungs, and in the elderly can be fatal. To combat it, the doctors resorted to an intensive treatment with high-flow oxygen, avoiding intubation. However, a respiratory crisis last Saturday raised the maximum alert. The medical team acted quickly to stabilize him, but the episode highlighted the seriousness of the situation. And the challenges don't stop there. New tests revealed additional complications. A mild renal insufficiency was detected, which could affect his recovery if there is a deterioration. Moreover, thrombocytopenia, a reduction in platelets, increases the risk of bleeding, making any deterioration even more dangerous. With the Pope's health under constant scrutiny, uncertainty grows. The Vatican remains on alert, while the world anxiously awaits the next developments. To address the complications, the medical team resorted to a blood transfusion, trying to restore hemoglobin levels and ensure adequate oxygenation of the body. Despite the severity of the condition, Pope Francis has shown remarkable strength. Even weakened, he remains conscious, lucid, and fully oriented, which has brought relief to the doctors and hope to the faithful. His resilience goes beyond the physical. In his room on the 10th floor of the Gemelli Hospital, he continues to hold celebrations and maintain his spiritual routine. What impresses me the most is his stance in the face of the situation. In the midst of the crisis, he conveys messages of serenity and confidence, reinforcing the importance of faith. His words resonate among those who follow his recovery, becoming a symbol of resilience. The doctors, although they have managed to stabilize him, remain cautious. His condition requires continuous and meticulous monitoring, evaluating every aspect of his health with utmost attention. The fragility of her condition does not allow for mistakes. Meanwhile, the world is mobilizing. Religious leaders, political figures, and faithful from different countries express support and send messages of solidarity. Among all the demonstrations of affection, the drawings and letters sent by children seem to have touched the Pope's heart in a special way. But as time goes by, an inevitable question arises. What will happen to the leadership of the Church if his health worsens? The possibility of a succession becomes an increasingly debated topic. Even facing this turmoil, the Pope does not stray from his global concerns. His voice remains firm against the injustices of the world, including the war in Ukraine, which he described as an open wound for humanity. His commitment to peace remains unshakable, regardless of the difficulties he faces. This moment marks not only a medical challenge, but a turning point for the Vatican. The coming weeks will be decisive. The specialists adjust the treatments and monitor every detail of her recovery, while the Catholic community remains in prayer, waiting with hope for the unfolding of this story. If Pope Francis's recovery does not progress as expected, the Vatican may be forced to make drastic decisions. What would that mean for the Catholic Church? The answer could define the coming months, and possibly the course of the papacy. The health situation of the pontiff has raised a global alert. His respiratory condition, already compromised by previous issues, has become even more critical with the pneumonia he is facing. But to what extent can this crisis change his trajectory and that of the Church? To understand the severity of the situation, it is essential to analyze the factors that have worsened his condition. The Pope not only suffers from asthma, but also has bronchiectasis, a permanent alteration in the bronchi caused by past infections. This combination makes respiratory diseases even more dangerous. Moreover, few know that, in his youth, Francisco faced tuberculosis and had to undergo surgery in which he lost part of his right lung. This means that, even before this pneumonia, his lung capacity was already reduced. Now his fight against the infection is even more challenging. One of the most concerning signs recently emerged: difficulty speaking. For many, this may seem like just a voice problem, but in reality, it is an alarming indicator. When someone loses the ability to speak due to respiratory failure, it means that every drop of energy is being used just to try to breathe. The doctors implemented high-flow oxygen therapy, an essential technology to keep the airways open and prevent lung collapse. However, that is not enough. The treatment involves potent antibiotics, bronchodilators, and respiratory physiotherapy to prevent the infection from worsening. The problem is that recovery, especially in elderly patients, is uncertain. At 87 years old, any infection can become a greater threat. The body responds more slowly, and complications can arise at any moment. The Vatican tries to maintain calm and avoid speculation. But the truth is that this is not the first health crisis faced by the Pope. In 2021, he underwent intestinal surgery. In 2023, his mobility difficulties intensified. Now this new battle presents the Church with an inevitable question. Are we facing a moment that could redefine the future of the papacy? The upcoming medical updates may bring answers, but they may also raise new questions. The world watches closely as the Church prepares for what could be one of the most critical moments of Francis's leadership. The respiratory crisis faced by Pope Francis not only puts his life at risk, but also reignites a global debate about lung diseases and their impact on public health. Currently, more than 25 million people in the United States live with asthma, and the numbers continue to grow. What concerns specialists is that this condition is not limited to genetic factors. The environment, air pollution, and exposure to allergens play a fundamental role in its development. Studies reveal that in some children the symptoms disappear for years, only to return with even greater intensity in adulthood. Moreover, the inequality in access to treatment makes the situation even more alarming. Data indicates that certain communities are disproportionately affected, especially African American and Puerto Rican groups. This indicates that the problem is not just medical, but also involves socioeconomic and environmental factors. Although advances in medicine have reduced the mortality rate of asthma, many people are still unaware of the risks of living with a chronic respiratory disease. Pope Francis's situation is a reminder that asthma and other lung conditions should be taken seriously. At the biological level, asthma originates in the bronchi, responsible for conducting air to the lungs. In a healthy organism, microscopic sensors control the opening and closing of these airways. However, in asthmatic patients, this system becomes hyperreactive. Small changes in temperature, dust, or contact with allergens can trigger an exaggerated contraction of the bronchi, making breathing difficult. Two types of receptors play a central role in this process: beta-adrenergic receptors, which promote dilation, and cholinergic receptors, which induce airway closure. In patients with asthma, this balance is disrupted, making the attacks more frequent and severe. But what determines who will develop asthma? The answer involves a complex set of factors. Research indicates that the risk can arise from pregnancy, influenced by the mother's age, diet, and even the baby's birth weight. After birth, exposure to dust mites, dust, and urban pollution can be decisive in triggering the disease. The case of Pope Francis brings an inevitable reflection. Respiratory conditions cannot be underestimated. His struggle against pneumonia exposes the challenges faced by millions of people around the world, highlighting the urgency of improving the prevention and treatment of these diseases. The next medical updates will determine the course of his recovery, while the world closely follows each new development in this crisis. Asthma is not just an individual challenge, but a public health issue. The case of Pope Francis brought this reality to the forefront, showing how chronic respiratory diseases can impact not only the quality of life, but also pose a fatal risk. Now the world eagerly awaits new updates on his recovery. Each small change can be decisive, and the uncertainty about his future remains. Are we facing a moment of overcoming, or witnessing a historic milestone in the papacy? For those who suffer from asthma, the daily struggle goes beyond shortness of breath. It affects sleep, work and school performance, and even the ability to perform simple tasks. The frustration of wanting to walk and feeling the lungs fail is a reality for millions of people. But there's a twist in this story. Medical advancements have brought new perspectives in the treatment of asthma. Today, with artificial intelligence and personalized therapies, it is possible to predict and control crises more effectively. However, one often overlooked factor can be crucial: nutrition. Research indicates that deficiencies in vitamin C and E increase the risk of developing asthma. Moreover, obesity can significantly worsen the symptoms. Studies show that weight loss reduces both the frequency and intensity of seizures, making healthy habits a powerful tool in controlling the disease. But the impacts are not just physical. Asthma also affects emotional health. Imagine living under the constant threat of a respiratory attack, losing nights of sleep, or having to repeatedly miss work and school. This reality affects not only the patients but also their families. Given this, the approach to treatment has evolved. Before, asthma was treated generically, but today doctors recognize that each patient is unique. The advancement of research has allowed treatments to be adjusted according to genetic, environmental, and individual factors, making disease control more efficient. Meanwhile, the situation of Pope Francis continues to be closely monitored. Each medical decision could define the next chapters of his journey, and perhaps, the future of the Catholic Church. In recent years, one of the greatest advances in asthma treatment has been the development of monoclonal antibodies, an innovative therapy that has transformed the lives of many patients. This approach blocks molecules responsible for inflammation in the lungs, reducing severe attacks and improving quality of life. But the advances don't stop there. Scientists are now exploring genetics and epigenetics to predict who is at greater risk of developing asthma and to further personalize treatments. Emerging technologies, such as artificial intelligence and big data analysis, allow for the identification of patterns in patients' symptoms, preventing crises even before they occur. But if science has evolved so much, why is asthma still a public health problem? The answer lies in inequality. Some communities face much higher rates of the disease due to pollution, limited access to medical care, and lack of resources for adequate treatments. Therefore, experts emphasize that it is not enough to simply create new medications. It is necessary to make these advances accessible to everyone. International collaboration is essential to reduce the impact of asthma on the most vulnerable populations. This challenge reminds us that, despite technological advances, there is still a long way to go to ensure that no one goes without treatment. If we talk about leadership and commitment to humanity, it is impossible to ignore the role of Pope Francis. From his childhood in Buenos Aires to his arrival at the Vatican, his journey has always been marked by the fight for social justice and inclusion. What makes his leadership unique is his ability to modernize the Church without losing the essence of the faith he preaches. Since the beginning of his papacy, he has promoted significant reforms, often facing internal resistance. His simple lifestyle and approachable demeanor have won admirers both inside and outside the Church. Among his greatest contributions, is the global alert about environmental preservation. In 2015, he published the encyclical Laudato Si', addressing climate change as a moral and social issue, reinforcing the need to care for the planet. His message echoed around the world, reminding everyone that the protection of the earth is a collective duty. However, his papacy also faced challenges. His attempts to reform the administration and finances of the Vatican met with strong resistance. But Francis remained steadfast in his commitment to building a church that is more transparent and faithful to its values. Moreover, his compassionate approach to controversial issues, such as the inclusion of the LGBTQ community, divorced individuals, and other historically marginalized groups, has redefined the perception of the Church. Now, as he battles his worst health crisis, the world wonders, will he be able to continue his mission? What will happen to the Vatican if his condition worsens? The answers could define the next steps for the Catholic Church. The world watches in silence, breath held. The lights of the Gemelli Hospital remain on as the fate of Pope Francis seems to hang by an invisible thread. Each beat of his heart echoes like a clock marking the time of uncertainty. The Vatican, a symbol of unwavering faith for centuries, now finds itself facing an inevitable dilemma. What will happen if it can no longer continue? Corridors of the Vatican, and yes, within his own body, where weakened lungs struggle for every breath. The Church has seen crises before, but this is not just another one. It's not just about a weakened leader, but about a man who has carried the hope of millions on his shoulders. The doubt hangs in the air. Is this the end of his papacy? While doctors try to contain the spread of the disease, a storm is brewing behind the scenes at the Vatican. Rumors are circulating, theories are emerging, and the word succession is beginning to echo among the cardinals. But nothing is defined yet. Everything depends on an unpredictable factor, the weather. And as the clock ticks on, the faithful pray. The Pope, even in the face of his body's collapse, continues to do what he has always done, spreading faith. His words, even though spoken with effort, are of hope. Trust, a single word that resonates in the hearts of those who follow him. But time waits for no one. In the corridors of the Vatican, uncertainty looms like a shadow. What will happen in the coming days? Will your body resist? Will your legacy be interrupted? Or will it continue to shape the history of the Church? The silence responds, and the world waits, attentive to the inevitable conclusion of an era.